In my past life, I made the mistake of marrying Zayn Walker, the man I had loved in secret for years. It was a family-arranged marriage, a perfect match on paper. But reality had other ideas. Zayn barely came home, and when he did, it was only to parade his new lover in front of me. He didn't care if I saw them together laughing, touching, acting like I didn't exist. My love for him? It was pathetic, one-sided, and utterly wasted. When I got a second chance at life, I swore I wouldn't make the same mistake. This time, I'd live for myself. No more chasing after a man who didn't deserve me. Instead, I'd pursue my dreams of becoming an actress, throw myself into my career, and stay as far away from Zayn as possible. But fate, as it turns out, has a twisted sense of humor. At the premiere of my first major film, I met someone unexpected: Ethan Walker. He was Zayn's uncle, though you'd never guess it from the way he carried himself. Confident, charming, and devastatingly handsome, Ethan was everything Zayn wasn't. And somehow, through a series of impulsive decisions and a whirlwind of events, I ended up marrying him. That's right, I became Zayn's aunt. The man who once broke my heart now had to greet me with a polite Auntie. Chapter 1. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 10 p.m. Zayn wasn't coming home tonight. Again. 6 months into our marriage, my husband barely even stayed in this house. I let out a soft, bitter laugh, shaking my head at my own foolishness. How could I blame him, really? I'd been in love with him since college, chasing after him like a moth to a flame. The fact that I'd managed to marry him at all had felt like a dream come true, even if it came through a family-arranged union. Back then, I told myself that having him in my life in any way was enough. But now, I wasn't so sure. Just as I was about to turn in for the night, I heard the front door creak open. My heart jumped. Was it him? Kicking off the blanket, I slipped on my slippers and hurried out of the bedroom, my pulse quickening with anticipation. But when I reached the top of the stairs, what I saw stopped me in my tracks. Zayn wasn't alone. He'd brought home another woman. And he wasn't even trying to hide it. The man who had been so cold and distant to me now sat on the living room sofa, holding this stranger in his arms like she was his whole world. His face, always so indifferent whenever he looked at me, was soft and full of affection as he gazed at her. I stood there, frozen, as a wave of humiliation and anger swept through me. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was flaunting it. Swallowing my pride, I forced myself to take a deep breath and walked down the stairs, keeping my voice as steady as possible. Zayn, I said, my tone sharp but calm. Who is this woman? He barely even glanced at me. Oh, Guinevere, he said casually, like I was interrupting something trivial. Meet Clara. He turned back to the woman in his arms, his voice softening in a way I'd never heard before. She's my one true love. My stomach twisted at his words, but I refused to let it show. Zayn, we've been married for less than a year, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. What is this supposed to mean? He sighed, looking at me with the kind of exasperation one might reserve for a particularly annoying coworker. I thought it was obvious. Our marriage was never about love. It was just a business arrangement between our families. I've always loved Clara, she's my true love. He reached out to brush Clara's hair away from her face. His touch was so tender it made my chest ache. Now that she's agreed to be with me, there's no point in pretending anymore. Let's get a divorce. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as Clara turned to me with a smug smile, as she'd already won some competition I didn't even know I was in. And what about me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You don't feel anything for me? Not even a little? He didn't hesitate. No, he said firmly, his voice cold and absolute. Not even a little. And just like that, whatever was left of my heart shattered. As if to twist the knife deeper, Zayn leaned in and kissed Clara right in front of me, his lips lingering on hers as if I wasn't even standing there. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers. But instead, I just stood there, watching as the man I had loved for years held another woman like she was the center of his universe. When they finally pulled apart, Zayn turned back to me, his tone so casual it was almost cruel. "Look, Guinevere, I know you've always had feelings for me. That's why I agreed to marry you in the first place. Consider this marriage my way of fulfilling your little fantasy. But now that you've had your dream come true, it's time for me to move on and find my own happiness." I stared at him, stunned. What was this? Some kind of sick joke? I'd given him everything: my love, my loyalty, my dreams, and he treated it like it was some kind of charity event. I thought of all the things I'd sacrificed for him. He said he wanted a quiet, gentle wife who would stay out of the spotlight, so I'd given up my dreams of becoming an actress. How I'd changed myself to fit his ideal, believing that if I tried hard enough, I could make him love me. But in the end, none of it mattered. I let out a laugh, sharp and bitter, as I looked at the two of them cuddling on my sofa like they owned the place. "You know what, Zayn?" I said, my voice ice cold. "You're right. I must have been blind. Blind to think someone as two-faced and disgusting as you could ever be worth my time." That got his attention. He turned to me, his expression one of mild surprise. Well, he said, his tone mocking. "Look at that. You do have a temper after all. Guess that's why you could never compare to my sweet, gentle Clara." He reached out to play with Clara's hair, kissing her again as if to prove his point. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. "This is my house, Zayn. Not some cheap motel for you and your mistress. Get out. Both of you." He finally stopped kissing her long enough to glance at me, an amused smirk tugging at his lips. "Fine," he said, standing up and smoothing out his shirt. "We'll leave. No need to get so dramatic." I glared at him, my fury boiling over. "Oh, don't worry. I'll make this nice and easy for you. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., we're meeting at the Civil Affairs office to finalize the divorce. Bring your precious Clara along, you can get married right after. Hell, maybe you'll even break a Guinness World Record for the fastest remarriage in history. You're welcome, by the way." Zayn froze, clearly shocked by my words. But then, to my disbelief, he burst out laughing. "Come on, Clara," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Let's go. This place is too boring anyway." Chapter 2. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed, feeling like a wreck. Today was the day I'd finally cut him out of my life for good. I was halfway to the court when it happened. Out of nowhere, a taxi came barreling toward me, completely out of control. Crash! The sound was deafening. My ears started ringing, drowning out everything else. Shattered glass flew everywhere. The twisted metal of my car groaned under the force of the impact. I sat there motionless, slumped against the seat, my breath shallow and uneven. My vision blurred, and no matter how hard I tried to keep my eyes open, everything around me dissolved into darkness. So, this is how it ends, huh? I felt weightless, like my body had floated away from the wreckage, drifting somewhere. For what felt like an eternity, I just existed in a vast, empty nothingness. Then, out of the void, a light appeared. It wasn't just any light, it was sharp, focused like it knew exactly where to find me. It grew brighter and brighter, rushing toward me at an impossible speed. I didn't even have time to be afraid. The moment it reached me, I felt a jolt, and suddenly, my eyes snapped open. No light. No darkness. No wreckage. I blinked, disoriented, and looked around. Wait. This was my old bedroom? I sat up slowly, my hands trembling as I touched the sheets. The sunlight streaming through the window, the familiar furniture, the faint smell of fresh laundry, it was all exactly how I remembered it. What was going on? Was I alive? Was this heaven? Or some kind of dream? I pinched my cheek hard. Ow! Nope, not a dream. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and checked the date. My jaw nearly dropped. I'd gone back in time. A whole year. I stared at the screen, trying to wrap my head around it. This wasn't the worst point in my life, but it wasn't exactly great either. The good news? I hadn't yet abandoned my dream of becoming an actress. The bad news? My father's company was still on the brink of disaster. That mess had led to the ridiculous marriage arrangement with Zayn in the first place. I still didn't know how my father had convinced me to agree to something so absurd. Just then, my phone buzzed, breaking me out of my thoughts. It was Linda, my agent. "Hey, Linda." I answered. "Guinevere, listen, there's a big movie premiere tomorrow night," she said, her tone urgent but excited. "You need to go. It's a great chance to network. Tons of big-name directors will be there." I froze for a moment. The timeline was exactly as I remembered it. In my last life, I had skipped this event because Zayn had asked to meet me that night. What a joke! No man, let alone that man, was worth sacrificing my career for. "Got it," I said firmly. "I'll be there. Thanks, Linda." As I hung up, I gripped my phone tightly, half expecting to wake up back in that crumpled car. But no. This was real. The universe had given me a second chance, not just to escape Zayn, but to reclaim everything I'd given up for him. I turned to the mirror across the room and took in my reflection. My blonde waves framed my face messily, a far cry from the polished look I used to maintain. I remembered the day Zayn had demanded I dye my hair brown and straighten it. "It doesn't suit you," he'd said, frowning at my golden curls. "If we're going to do this marriage thing, you'll need to look the part." And like the spineless idiot I was back then, I'd listened. It wasn't until much later that I realized why he'd asked me to change. Clara had straight brown hair. Apparently, even as a stand-in, I had to look like her. What a pathetic fool I'd been. I ran my fingers through my hair, a smirk tugging at my lips. Zayn could keep his precious Clara. This was me, bold, beautiful, and unapologetically myself. By the time Linda's makeup artist arrived, I was already in a better mood. As she worked her magic, I watched my reflection transform. Dark, smoky shadow emphasized my almond-shaped eyes, giving them a seductive, almost dangerous edge. My bold features came to life under the soft glow of the vanity lights, framed perfectly by my golden waves. Two loose strands fell delicately over my neck, which was adorned with silver hoop earrings that added just the right amount of flair. It was a look that exuded confidence, commanding but not intimidating. I smiled at the woman staring back at me in the mirror. It had been so long since I'd seen her. This time, there would be no crying over men who didn't deserve me. No compromises. No self-doubt. This time, I was going to fight for the life I wanted. I stepped into the dressing room and slipped into the gown Linda had picked out for me, a sleek white dress that hugged my figure perfectly. It was elegant, timeless, and just a little daring. When I walked out, my assistant Willow gasped audibly. "Oh my God, Guinevere," she said, her eyes wide with admiration. "You look like you stepped straight out of a fairy tale. I mean it, this is next-level gorgeous." Her enthusiasm was so genuine it made me laugh. "Thanks, Willow," I said with a small smile, my confidence growing by the second. Chapter 3. The gala was in full swing, buzzing with energy. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers, shimmering gowns, and the hum of lively conversation. It wasn't just a gathering of directors, producers, and actors. There were also top-tier CEOs mingling among the crowd, their tailored suits and easy confidence setting them apart. I sipped the red wine in my hand, scanning the room. My eyes landed on Director Miller, one of the most sought-after filmmakers in the industry. This was it, my chance to make a move. But then, I noticed a man standing next to him. Something about him felt familiar. I shook off the thought. Focus. If I wanted to stand out tonight, I couldn't afford to hesitate. Straightening my posture, I made my way over, a confident smile on my face. "Director Miller," I said warmly. "It's an honor to meet you." I'm Guinevere, an actress. I heard you're working on No Escape. Are there any roles you're still casting for? Director Miller turned to me, his expression polite but curious. I smiled again, hoping to leave an impression. Guinevere? He echoed, but before he could say more, the man next to him spoke instead. Guinevere. His voice was calm, deep, and commanding enough to draw my full attention. I turned to him, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The man standing before me had a presence that was impossible to ignore. Tall, probably over 6 feet, with sharp black eyes that seemed to see straight through me. His features were striking, almost too perfect, like they'd been sculpted by an artist. A high, defined nose, strong jawline, and lips that held just the faintest hint of a natural blush. His expression was cold but not unkind, and there was an air of quiet power about him that made the entire room feel smaller. "Allow me to introduce myself," he said, locking eyes with me. "Ethan Walker, chairman of Walker Group." For a second, I froze. The Ethan Walker? Head of one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country? What was someone like him doing here? Director Miller, sensing my surprise, chuckled. "Ah, so you're one of Linda's artists. She mentioned you yesterday when she brought Annabelle in for an audition." I quickly pulled myself together, my professional instincts kicking in. "Yes," I said with a polite nod. "Linda speaks very highly of you, Director Miller, and I've always admired your work." But Ethan cut me off again, his tone casual but firm. "Director Miller," he said. "Is this the project I'm funding?" "That's right, Mr. Walker," Miller replied, smiling. "We've cast most of the supporting roles, but we're still searching for the perfect lead actress, someone who can really grab the audience's attention." Ethan's gaze shifted back to me, his expression softening slightly in a way that caught me off guard. "I think she should audition," he said, his voice calm yet decisive. "Why not set up a time for her to try out?" Director Miller nodded enthusiastically. "If Mr. Walker recommends you, that's good enough for me. I'll send you the details." I quickly pulled out my phone, my hands trembling slightly. Things were moving so fast that I could barely keep up. "Thank you, Director Miller. And thank you, Mr. Walker," I said, glancing at Ethan. He gave me a small nod, his expression unreadable. Once the exchange was done, I slipped away to the balcony, needing a moment to catch my breath. The crisp night air was a welcome contrast to the warmth and noise of the gala. I leaned against the railing, looking up at the stars. They sparkled in the dark sky, scattered yet perfectly placed, each one shining in its own space. "Miss, may I join you?" The deep, familiar voice startled me. I turned to find Ethan standing there, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. He looked even more striking under the soft glow of the moonlight, his sharp features somehow both intimidating and refined. "Oh, Mr. Walker," I said, straightening up. "Thank you for helping me back there. I really appreciate it." He stepped closer, his movements deliberate but unhurried. He was nothing like Zayn. Where Zayn had always felt like he was trying too hard, flashing empty smiles and rehearsed charm, Ethan's presence was effortless. It wasn't just his looks that set him apart. It was his quiet confidence, the kind that made you feel like he was always in control. "You don't need to thank me," he said, his tone calm. "Your father came to see me recently. He wanted to discuss a partnership." I frowned slightly. My father must have gone to him after the company's financial troubles started. "I have a lot of respect for your father," Ethan continued. "But business is business. I don't offer help without reason." His words were measured, but there was a weight to them that made my stomach twist. "And so," he added, "I proposed a marriage alliance." I stared at him, my mind racing. "That's why my father agreed to this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan gave a small nod, his dark eyes steady on mine. He mentioned your feelings for Zayn. He said. And I thought I was doing you a favor. The words hit me like a bucket of cold water. He had been willing to arrange a marriage with me simply because he thought I loved Zayn. Well, I said after a moment, forcing a small laugh. I don't feel that way about him anymore. Isn't there another option? For a brief moment, something flickered across Ethan's face, surprise, maybe, or something deeper, but it was gone as quickly as it came. There is. He said simply. Me. I didn't know much about Ethan Walker, who he really was beneath that composed exterior, or what kind of person he might be when no one was looking. But one thing was certain. Even if he turned out to be complicated, he was already miles ahead of Zayn. At least Ethan came across as a decent man, not the shallow, manipulative type I'd wasted too much time on before. Well, I said, lifting my chin slightly. I'm open to the idea. But I have to ask, how exactly are you related to Zayn? His expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of amusement in his dark eyes. I'm his uncle, he said evenly. But only in name. Don't worry, I'm not an old man. The overly serious way he said it caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, of course not. Mr. Walker looks far too young and charming to be mistaken for an old man. Ethan's lips twitched like he was fighting back a smile but didn't fully give in. He studied me for a moment, his gaze sharp yet unreadable, before speaking again. So, he asked, his voice calm but deliberate. Are you going to marry me? Because if you're going to change your mind, now's the time. I don't offer second chances. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a second, I hesitated, not because I doubted him, but because the sheer confidence in his tone left me momentarily speechless. Well, I said finally, a small smile tugging at my lips. If marriage is inevitable, I'd much rather marry someone like you. You're grounded, reliable, and let's be honest, you're far more attractive than Zayn ever was. I paused, tilting my head slightly as if weighing my words. You're also more charismatic, more capable, and frankly, you carry yourself like someone who actually knows what he's doing. Ethan raised a brow, his stoic expression cracking just enough to show a hint of surprise. And I added with a light shrug. You also happen to be richer, more powerful, and far more likely to help my father's company get back on its feet. So yes, I think you're the better option. To my surprise, Ethan's composure faltered for a moment. He reached up and rubbed the back of his neck, a genuine, almost boyish grin breaking through his usual cool demeanor. It was strangely endearing, and I found myself smiling in return. All right, I said firmly, my voice steady. I'll marry you. You're agreeing just like that? He asked, a teasing lilt creeping into his tone as he studied me. I raised an eyebrow at him. You're the one who proposed this arrangement, aren't you? If Zayn's off the table, and then you'll have to do. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head slightly. Fair enough. I did propose it, and I don't go back on my word. If you're unhappy with Zayn, and then I'll handle it myself. Besides. He paused, his voice softening just enough to catch my attention. I believe in your father's abilities, and I trust that an alliance between our families would benefit both sides significantly. I nodded, appreciating his candor. If this is going to be a purely practical arrangement, I said slowly, then I promise I won't cause any unnecessary problems for you. If you ever meet someone you truly care about, we can end this cleanly. No drama, no hard feelings. Ethan's gaze remained steady, his dark eyes holding mine. Agreed. The same goes for you. For a moment, the two of us stood there, the weight of our agreement settling between us. It wasn't romantic, not in the traditional sense, but it was honest. And in a strange way, that felt more reassuring than any empty promises of love or devotion. Just then, my phone vibrated in my hand, breaking the moment. I glanced down at the screen and felt my stomach twist. The caller ID read, Zayn. Chapter 4. Oh, great! I completely forgot to tell him I wasn't coming. Ethan's calm gaze lingered on me as I hesitated for a moment, and then sighed and hit the speakerphone button. Zayn's voice blasted through the line, sharp and filled with irritation. Guinevere, what the hell is this? Are you ditching me? I'm giving you 10 minutes to show up. If you don't, the engagement's off. The sheer arrogance. He said it like I couldn't live without him, like I was begging him to marry me. The audacity made my stomach churn. Just thinking about his ridiculous behavior was enough to make my skin crawl. Well, I said, my voice cool and razor sharp. That works perfectly for me. Who do you think you are? Go run back to your little dream girl and stop wasting my time. Guinevere. Before he could launch into another self-righteous tirade, Ethan cut him off with the kind of quiet authority that could silence a room. Zayn, he said, his tone calm yet firm. You should show some respect when speaking to your elders. There was an awkward pause on the other end before Zayn's confused voice came back, slightly less aggressive this time. Uncle? What's going on? Why are you with her? Ethan didn't miss a beat. The marriage arrangement no longer concerns you, he said smoothly, as if discussing a business deal that had already been finalized. Guinevere will be marrying me instead. Which makes her, in terms of family hierarchy, your aunt. I couldn't resist twisting the knife. That's right, dear nephew. I chimed in, my voice dripping with exaggerated sweetness. From now on, you'll need to show your elders some proper respect, okay? Before he could sputter out a response, I hung up the call with a flick of my finger. The thought of Zayn's stunned, humiliated expression sent a wave of satisfaction through me. I could practically see him fuming on the other end of the line, and the best part? He'd have to start calling me Auntie. Oh, the irony. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought. Ethan raised an eyebrow at me, clearly amused by the grin I couldn't keep off my face. You seem awfully pleased with yourself, he remarked, his tone light but curious. Do you dislike Zayn that much? I quickly composed myself, wiping the smugness from my expression. Mr. Walker, I said with mock seriousness. A friend of mine told me Zayn doesn't exactly have the best reputation. So yes, I'm thrilled to not have to marry him. Maybe a little too thrilled, I admitted, letting out a small self-deprecating laugh. Sorry about that. Ethan nodded thoughtfully as if he were weighing my words. Fair enough, he said, his voice calm as always. Guinevere, he added after a brief pause. We can talk more about the marriage arrangements another day. It's getting late. Let me take you home. Wait, was this the same Ethan Walker who was supposed to be cold, distant, and impossible to please? The ruthless perfectionist everyone seemed so terrified of. Because the man standing in front of me was practically the picture of politeness and consideration. Maybe the rumors weren't entirely true. Maybe they'd gotten him wrong. Or maybe people just liked to exaggerate. Thank you, Fiank, I said, flashing him a playful wink. You're welcome, Fianky, he replied smoothly, his voice carrying just the faintest hint of amusement. When I got home, I wasted no time updating my parents about the sudden change in plans. To avoid any awkward questions, I told them a little white lie about how Ethan and I had met at the gala. It was love at first sight, I said with just the right amount of conviction. We hit it off immediately. It's mutual, we both feel the same way. As for Zayn, well, they'd never been particularly fond of him, to begin with. So when I introduced Ethan as my new fiancé, they didn't ask too many questions. In fact, they seemed relieved. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Director Miller. The audition was scheduled for the day after tomorrow. Wasting no time, I opened the script and dove in, studying every line, every scene, every nuance. Before I knew it, hours had passed. I was so absorbed in the material that I barely noticed my phone buzzing again until the sound finally broke through my concentration. Reluctantly, I set the script aside and answered the call. "Hello." On the other end, a familiar, steady voice greeted me. "Guinevere," Ethan said, his tone as composed as ever. "Are you free tonight to discuss the details of our marriage?" I smiled to myself. Of course. By the time I hung up the phone, I realized the sun was already setting. I stood up quickly, smoothed my dress, and touched up my makeup before stepping out of the private room. The door creaked open, and there he was, Ethan, sitting patiently on a chair, his gaze already fixed on me as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Walker," I said, trying to sound casual but feeling a little guilty. "It's no trouble," he replied, his tone calm and steady. "I haven't been here long." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a contract and a sleek black pen. With practiced ease, he placed them on the table between us. "Guinevere," he said, looking at me with his usual composed demeanor. "If you're satisfied with the terms, you can sign here." I skimmed the document. It was fair, straightforward, and surprisingly free of the kind of hidden traps or unreasonable demands I'd half expected. Everything about it felt practical, honest, and respectful. I smiled as I picked up the pen and signed my name. "Mr. Walker," I said. "About the wedding." He met my gaze, his expression thoughtful but unreadable. "We both have our careers to focus on," he said matter-of-factly. "And if your audition goes well, you'll likely be tied up with filming for a while. Let's postpone the wedding for now. But we'll still need to make time to register the marriage officially. Oh, and we'll pick out the rings together when we have the time to do it properly." He was so composed, so reasonable. It was such a stark contrast to Zayn's arrogance and entitlement. Ethan's calm, considerate approach was like a breath of fresh air. "That sounds good to me, Mr. Walker," I replied. "But my audition is the day after tomorrow, so we'll have to deal with the paperwork after that." He chuckled softly, shaking his head as if I'd just said something ridiculous. "Guinevere," he said with a hint of exasperation. "Are you really still calling me Mr. Walker? Send me your schedule, and we'll plan everything around you." I blinked, momentarily stunned by how accommodating he was. "You're amazing," I blurted out. "An actual saint. A living, breathing saint," he laughed, the sound low and warm. "That's quite the exaggeration," he teased. "Just call me Ethan, okay?" On the day of the audition, my friend Willow came to pick me up. "You've got this, Guinevere," she cheered, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. "Go crush it and land that lead role, you're perfect for it." Her energy was infectious, and by the time we arrived at the studio, I felt more confident than ever. When it was finally my turn, I walked into the audition room and poured everything I had into the character. I didn't just act, I became her. By the time I finished, the room was silent, save for the sound of Director Miller and the screenwriter exchanging glances. Director Miller leaned forward, a small, approving smile on his face. "Guinevere, that was excellent," he said warmly. "You brought the character to life in a way I didn't expect. Honestly, I think you've captured her essence perfectly. That said, we'll still need to consider all the candidates before making a final decision. Either way, you'll hear from us soon." Relief washed over me. Even if I didn't get the part, knowing they appreciated my performance made all the hours I'd spent preparing to feel worth it. As I was gathering my things to leave, a sharp voice called out behind me. "So, you're Guinevere?" I turned to see Annabelle, an established actress with a reputation for being difficult. She stood with her arms crossed, her gaze sharp and unfriendly. You don't look like much," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. I blinked, unsure how to respond. "Let me give you a little advice," she continued, her words sharp enough to cut. "Don't get too full of yourself. If I didn't get the role, what makes you think you will? What? Are you so confident because you've got someone pulling strings for you?" Her hostility was palpable, and the room's atmosphere shifted instantly. I forced a polite smile. "Miss Annabelle," I said evenly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just here to audition. Whether or not I get the role is entirely up to Director Miller and his team. I've done my best, and if it's not enough, that's something I'll have to accept." But she wasn't finished. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice grew even sharper. "Don't play innocent with me," she sneered. "I saw you the other night, laughing and chatting with Mr. Walker on the balcony. Don't think I don't know what's going on. Using connections to steal roles from people who actually deserve them. Disgusting. I can't stand women like you climbing the ladder through backdoor deals instead of talent." The accusation stunned me, but before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Oh. Is that what you think?" I turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his expression calm but his eyes cold and unforgiving. "Annabelle," he said, his voice low and steely. "Guinevere and I were simply having a conversation that night. How you managed to twist that into a baseless accusation of favoritism is beyond me. People like you who lack the ability to stand on their own and resort to spreading malicious rumors are exactly why this industry can be so toxic." Annabelle's face froze, her confidence faltering under Ethan's piercing gaze. Without sparing her another glance, Ethan turned to me, his expression softening instantly. "Shall we?" he asked, holding out his hand. Ethan pulled me into the car, leaving Annabelle standing there, clearly stunned and flustered. As the car started moving, I turned to him, propping my chin on my hand, and asked, "What are you doing here?" He glanced at me briefly, his jaw still tight from earlier. "I had some free time, so I came over. What else?" His tone was casual, but the tension in his body said otherwise. "But seriously, why didn't you say anything back to her? She was completely out of line. Why did you just let her talk to you like that?" His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his frustration evident. I sighed softly, leaning back in my seat. "She's one of my agent's clients," I explained. "And technically she's my senior. But don't worry, I'm not a pushover. Just because I'm polite doesn't mean I'll let people push me around." Ethan didn't look convinced. "Still," he muttered. "What I said earlier, do you think it caused any trouble for you? I couldn't just stand there and let her talk to you like that. It was too much." I reached over and lightly patted the back of his hand. "Trouble? Don't be ridiculous. I should be thanking you, not the other way around." At that, the tension in his shoulders melted away, and a small genuine smile crept onto his face. "Just doing what I should," he said simply, as if it were no big deal. Later that day, Ethan took me to a jewelry store to pick out wedding rings. I followed behind him as he browsed the displays, watching the way he carefully examined each ring. His attention to detail, the way he genuinely seemed to care about my opinion, it stirred something in me I couldn't quite put into words. In my past life, Zayn had barely made an effort. He'd complained that choosing rings was a waste of time and picked one at random without even consulting me. It didn't fit properly, and I'd been too embarrassed to say anything. But Ethan, he had insisted on making time for this. He'd driven me here himself and was now thoughtfully considering every option, asking for my input with each one. How could two men from the same family be so vastly different? "Guinevere," he called out, his voice tinged with excitement. He pointed to a ring in the display case, and then turned to me with a rare, boyish grin. "Try this one. I think it'll suit you." The moment felt so sweet, so genuine, like something out of a romantic movie. For a second, I forgot this was just a marriage of convenience. I stepped closer to the display and glanced at the ring he'd picked. My jaw nearly dropped. The diamond was enormous. Wow! I muttered. This is bold. Is this what they call CEO taste? I couldn't help but laugh. Ethan raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. What? It's not that big, he said, feigning innocence. Besides, I picked it for the meaning behind it. I tilted my head, intrigued. Oh, and what meaning is that? Pure and flawless, he said without hesitation. Brilliant and bright. His voice was steady, but when I glanced up, I saw the way his gaze lingered on me, warm and unwavering. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The next morning, I was getting ready at my vanity, brushing on light makeup and tying my hair into a loose ponytail. A crisp white blouse completed the simple look. Right on time, my phone buzzed. Guinevere, I'm here. Ethan's voice came through, calm and reliable as always. Okay, I'll be right down, I replied, hanging up. As I grabbed my bag, I felt a strange warmth bloom in my chest. It wasn't something I'd ever felt before, not in my past life, not with Zayn. When I stepped outside, Ethan was waiting by his car, looking impossibly sharp in a tailored black suit. In his hands, he held a bouquet of vibrant red roses. These are for you, he said, holding them out with a small, teasing smile. Congratulations on officially graduating from singlehood to married life. I couldn't help but laugh as I took the flowers. Wow, Mr. Walker. I didn't know you had such a romantic side. Full marks for effort and ceremony. He sighed dramatically, shaking his head. We're married now and you're still calling me Mr. Walker. Who's the difficult one here? I won't say. That made me burst out laughing. On the surface, he seemed so serious and composed, but once you got to know him, there was a warmth and humor beneath it all that was completely unexpected. Ethan, I said, drawing his name out in a sing-song voice, fully intending to tease him. I watched in delight as the tips of his ears turned red almost instantly. Oh my God! Was he actually blushing? He was so serious most of the time, but this was adorable. The moment the staff handed us our marriage certificate, reality hit me. We were officially married. And thank goodness it wasn't Zayn this time. As we left, Ethan turned to me, his expression hesitant. Guinevere, he began. My parents invited us to dinner tonight. They want to celebrate the marriage. I raised an eyebrow. Why do you look so worried? Are you afraid I'll embarrass you or something? He immediately shook his head. No, it's not that. It's just. He hesitated, his tone softening. There'll be a lot of people there. Zayn included. Oh, I said, my lips twitching into a sly smile. That's perfect. The more, the merrier. And Zayn, even better. Ethan looked confused as I climbed into the car, but I couldn't help the bubbling excitement in my chest. I could already picture Zayn's bitter, frustrated expression as he watched me and Ethan together, knowing he couldn't do a single thing about it. Oh, this was going to be fun. I linked my arm with Ethan's, and he carried the gifts we had just bought, looking like a loving newlywed couple. Dad, Mom, these are the gifts Guinevere bought for you. She's been busy preparing for her audition, so I thought we'd visit after getting the certificate. Hello, Mom and Dad. Sorry for being late. Ethan's parents nodded approvingly. Their demeanor was calm and composed, and they said kindly, Don't be so formal, we're all family. At that moment, Zayn entered. He respectfully bowed to Ethan's parents, a stark contrast to his usual arrogant self, and greeted them politely. Good afternoon, Uncle Ethan and Auntie. Seeing us standing together, he clenched his fists and said formally, Congratulations on your marriage, Uncle. Seeing him pause, I kindly reminded him. Nephew, aren't you going to address me? Or do you not acknowledge your new aunt? His mouth twitched and he reluctantly said, Congratulations on your marriage, aunt. Turning a scumbag into a nephew who had to call me aunt was immensely satisfying. After dinner, I followed Ethan to the balcony on the second floor to get some fresh air. Ethan, you seem only a few years older than Zayn. The seniority difference feels great. I couldn't hide my excitement. It seems you enjoy being called aunt by someone. He's 25 and I'm 29. He placed his hand on my head, gently patting it. Oh, almost 30. I'm only 24. So, I'm the old cow eating young grass. His smile deepened. Guinevere, don't think I don't know you're using my uncle to get back at me. You used to like me so much, saying you'd only marry me. How could you change so quickly? Zayn's angry words shattered the peaceful moment. Zayn, how thick-skinned are you? Ethan is taller, more handsome, and gentler than you. Of course, I fell for him at first sight. It's normal to move on. Stop saying things to disgust me. I pretended to gag and rolled my eyes at him. Zayn, furious, said, Fine, Guinevere. Don't come crying to marry me later. Ethan glared at him angrily and said bluntly, Guinevere is already married to me. How could she marry you? Zayn, she's your elder now. Show some respect. Also, your recent performance has been poor. Be careful, or I'll transfer you to the Northwest branch. Zayn left, gritting his teeth. Ethan, you were so cool just now. You deserve a kiss. I blew him a kiss. He looked disappointed and said, Oh, I thought it would be a real kiss. I was ready to close my eyes and enjoy it. I patted his shoulder and smiled helplessly. He only acted like this in front of me. I really loved this double-standard contrast. My phone rang, showing Director Miller's name. Ethan gestured for me to answer. Guinevere, congratulations on passing the audition. Get ready to join the crew tomorrow. Thank you, Director Miller. I hung up, dancing with joy. Ethan, this isn't a dream, right? I'm going to play the lead. This is my first lead role in a movie. He suddenly hugged me, patting my back as if reassuring me that it was all real. Guinevere, you're amazing. I knew you'd impress Director Miller and the team with your talent. He let me celebrate in his arms, patiently responding to my excitement and praising me repeatedly. In no time, I had been filming for over half a month. From October to late November, the weather grew colder. Willow ran over with a down jacket. Willow, where did this down jacket come from? I don't remember bringing it. She looked at me with a gossipy smile. Guinevere, Mr. Walker's assistant just gave it to me. He said Mr. Walker noticed the temperature drop and didn't want you to catch a cold. He's too busy to come himself, so consider the jacket as his stand-in. I clutched the down jacket, feeling Ethan's warmth. Willow didn't miss the chance to tease me. Guinevere, tell me what's going on between you two. I promise I won't spill. Seeing her swear so earnestly, and after spending so much time together, I knew she was trustworthy. I gestured for her to come closer and whispered, We're married. What? Willow covered her mouth in shock, looking at me in disbelief. Shh! Keep it down. I'm not joking. It's just an arranged marriage. She smiled knowingly. Oh, just a fake marriage turning real. Got it. Don't worry, Guinevere, I'll keep this juicy secret to myself. Fake marriage turning real? I shook my head in denial. In late December, a heavy snowstorm forced Director Miller to halt filming. Fortunately, we were ahead of schedule. After the snowstorm, we only needed 3 more days to wrap up. I looked out at the endless snowy landscape from the hotel window. The snow had finally let up a bit. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my mom. Hello, Mom? Missing me? Filming will wrap up soon. I'll be home before New Year's. Silly child, you forgot, didn't you? Today is your birthday. Happy birthday from Mom and Dad. We wish you all the best in the new year. We'll give you your gift when you get back. Oh right, I turned 25 today. A while later, the doorbell rang. I tiptoed to the door and peeked through the peephole. It was Ethan. What was he doing here? I opened the door, surprised. What are you doing here? Driving in the snow is dangerous. He patted my head, still so gentle. I had some free time and missed you, so I came. Once inside, I noticed he was carrying a cake and a small gift box. Happy birthday, birthday girl. How did you know it was my birthday? It was on the marriage certificate. So, whether it's windy, rainy, snowy, or hailing, I'll be here. Ethan looked at me sincerely, his eyes full of genuine emotion. Tears streamed down my face. I think I was falling for him. He panicked, hurriedly wiping my tears. Why are you crying? Did I scare you? I shook my head and hugged him. These are tears of joy. Someone is willing to come for me. Thank you, Ethan. After being tormented by a scumbag in my previous life, I had lost hope in love. I cried for a long time before calming down. I escaped from his warm embrace, my eyes still wet with tears, and found his lips, kissing him. At first, he was stunned. But he quickly responded passionately. Breathing heavily, he caressed my face. Guinevere, I want to kiss you more. It wasn't a question, more like a declaration. He leaned in again, kissing me even more fervently than before. When I could barely breathe, he reluctantly pulled away. He leaned in once more, but I quickly covered his mouth with my hand. Ethan, I haven't eaten yet. Let me regain my strength, and then you can do whatever you want. I looked at him, blushing. I was too eager. I've been single all my life, and suddenly I have such a beautiful wife. I couldn't control myself. What? You've never been in a relationship? I pouted, showing my disbelief. Yes, I've been saving myself for you. He smiled helplessly and continued. But I'm glad I waited. It was worth it. How could he be so good at sweet talking? He placed candles shaped like the numbers 2 and 5 on the cake and lit them. Guinevere, make a wish. I obediently closed my eyes. May we have many more days like this. Then I blew out the candles and met his expectant gaze. I gave him a quick peck on the lips. His ears turned red again. He handed me a beautifully wrapped gift box. Guinevere, this is one of your birthday presents. I hope you like it. I widened my eyes, catching the key word. One of. Yes. This trip was a bit rushed. I'll give you the rest when you finish filming and come back. Wow! I opened the gift box to find a beautiful star necklace inside. Ethan, I love it. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. Let me put it on for you. He looked out the window, then back at me as I ate the cake. Guinevere, the snow has stopped. I'll go buy you some food nearby. Be good and don't open the door for strangers. Okay, okay? Don't go too far and be safe. I stood at the door, watching Ethan's departing figure, feeling a mix of reluctance and longing. Guinevere, why are you so hopeless? He's just leaving for a little while, not forever. The clock ticked loudly. He had been gone for over 2 hours. Why wasn't he back yet? The comedy show on TV suddenly lost its appeal. Could something have happened? I anxiously dialed his number. Hello, Guinevere, missing me? His reassuring voice came through the phone. Yes, why aren't you back yet? I held the phone in my left hand, drawing circles on the couch with my right. Ding dong. Both reality and the phone echoed the doorbell sound. Guinevere, I'm here. I opened the door again to find Ethan, arms full of bags. Why did you buy so much? You've lost too much weight. The food here must not suit your taste. So I asked your father and went to your favorite restaurant to get all your favorite dishes. But that's not close. No big deal. Eat while it's hot. You'll need your strength. Ethan trailed off, his tone carrying a hint of mischief. I glared at him, blushing. I can't eat all this. You should eat too, or you'll be hungry in the middle of the night. He chuckled, looking nothing like the cold CEO I first met. After dinner, he suggested we go for a walk. I happily took his hand and we strolled through the snowy landscape. They say couples who walk hand in hand in the snow will grow old together. I looked at our footprints, then up at him. I don't know about other couples, but we definitely will. Guinevere, I want to take you somewhere. He smiled mysteriously. As we neared the destination, he covered my eyes. Careful, just keep walking forward. He removed his hands, and I slowly adjusted to the light. The trees on either side were adorned with star-shaped lights, shining brightly. In front of us was a stage with an LED screen in the center. The screen lit up. It was my photos. From my college days, to my early acting career to now. I looked at Ethan in shock. He explained. 6 years ago, the Walker Group collaborated with your alma mater. I was invited to visit. There was a cultural performance, and I went to watch. One of the programs was called Classic Reenactment. You were the radiant lead on stage, and I was deeply captivated by you. I reached out to touch his face, and he held my hand. So, you've had a crush on me for 6 years? He nodded and continued. Yes, but I didn't have the courage to ask for your contact information back then. So, every year, I attended the cultural performance. Luckily, you were always the lead in that program. And later, when you became an actress, I could follow your career from afar. Ethan, you're so silly. And yet, you arranged for me to marry Zayn. I know the pain of unrequited love. I didn't want you to be stuck in that. Besides, there are successful cases of love after marriage, so. Thank goodness I was reborn and met Ethan at the premiere. I hugged him, crying in his arms. Don't push me away again. He held me tighter. I'm glad you attended the premiere and chose to marry me instead of Zayn. After a while, he led me to the center of the stage. The screen flickered with shooting stars. He knelt on one knee and took out a ring. Guinevere, will you marry me? Tears welled up in my eyes again. Yes. When one door closes, another opens. It's never too late for happiness.